Hello. As I am a literary critic, I will be reviewing all of the books I read in the year of 2023 as it is now 2024. Shocker, I am not an Englishman, but I have read a few books and I do have thoughts. While I do not own all the books I read in 2023, I own 3 of them. However, let's get started. I'm just gonna go through them. To start off, Legendborn by Tracy Dion. This is my second time reading the book because Bloodmarked came out this year and I reread Legendborn before I read Bloodmarked. To give you some input, Legendborn, black female MC witnesses magical incident and investigates to see if it may be related to her mother's passing. I just made one sentence explanations of the books. To give you my notes, Bloodmarked has very heavy world building and Legendborn. Like, I'm just gonna do both of them at the same time because they're like a series. However, heavy world building. World building is so extravagant, not extravagant, but like so impressive and just amazing and great to read. It doesn't really bore you, but it's a lot of information and it's just so crazy to me that Tracy Dion is able to do this. But the books are pretty thick, like they're pretty thick books. However, I do want to get them into my collection in the future. Urban fantasy I needed in my life. I feel like personally I'm someone who really enjoys urban fantasy, however struggles to find urban fantasy to enjoy because I just don't think there's a lot of urban fantasy, at least when I'm looking for it. So it's a struggle to find, but 5 out of 5 for Legendborn. Marked, it's the second in the series. It's fatter than Legendborn. Also, I feel like it contained more world building than what Legendborn. And my visual for like the world building, the first book is filling in the circle, and then the second book is filling outside of the circle. And it just, the world building is so immaculate. I can't express it enough. Just the world building is beautiful, amazing. It's beautiful. It's like my taking notes. And also 5 out of 5 because the story is just, it's doing its job, and I love that about the book. And I'm obsessed with like the Legendborn cycle series because it's so good. It's so good, and the hype is worth it. Like, this is one of the books I would say the hype is worth it. 10 out of 10. Going on, Red, White, and Royal Blue. This is actually a book I do have. I read this book this year, and it is a romance book, and it's very cupcakes and rainbows. It's very bright, and it's very important for me when I was reading it to remember that it was fiction, just because it kind of targets a lot of these very non-fictional aspects and stuff and uses a lot of those in the books, like a lot of books do. However, in this book it just kind of felt almost aspirational, and it just, I like, when it came to reading it, I just had to remind myself that it was fiction. It's popular, really popular book, and it's not bad. It came up with a movie that isn't like the book, but it's not bad. I don't know, I feel like it's just a romance book you'd read to get out of a reading slump, but not exceptional. 3 out of 5, 4 out of 5, that area, because it's good, but it's not that great. But it's good, so I do recommend it, but not that great. Aristotle and Dante, another book I read. This book makes me giggle because it's a YA romance, and basically it's like this angsty teen book about this dude named Ari and him meeting this other guy named Dante, them having a little romance thing, and then also like a bunch of teen reflection. And my notes for this book, it's amazing. Like, the hype on this book is so deserved, and also the writing on this book is so good. Like, one, the author, Benjamin Alir Sans, I don't know how to say their name. However, they were an English professor for 23 years, and it shows because this book is so well written. I mean, like, it's immaculately well written, and I just think this, in my brain, will be a classic in the future because of just how well written this book is. And this is the type of book that if you could give it to a 5th grader and they would read it and they would be able to understand it, then you could give it to a 20-year-old and they would read it and still be able to understand it and reflect on it and gain things from it. And it's just that good to me, and I just loved it. It's amazing. I also read Gothic by Emery Lee, and it's a YA romance. Rival family businesses and their kids coming together against a new competitor. This year I really did try to get into my like YA reading because I'm 17. However, I find that sometimes YA can just be very unapproachable in some books. I read a lot more YA fantasy than I read YA romance fiction because preference, and this book was very mid. It is romance, and I'm not against romance, I just don't really enjoy it all the time. That was the thing for me. It was like 2 out of 5 and at highest 3 out of 5. It wasn't bad. It wasn't terribly written. It was just very predictable, and like I guess that can be comforting in a sense, but for me it just ended up feeling like very, oh, I didn't really love it or feel any attachment to it, and I really don't think I'd reread in the future. So 2 out of 5. Another book I think I read this year. I might have read last year, however I'm still thinking of it this year, and that is The Fascinators by Andrew Eliopoulos. I feel like because I may have read this book 2022 and just not remember it. However, this book always makes me think about it so much because it's just like the premise of it is so good. And to give you that premise, in The Fascinators, this is a world where magic is accessible to anyone. All you have to do is you have necessary tools and stuff to do it. It's not like Magic Academy or anything like that, but it's more imagine you go to high school and there's a magic club. It's kind of frowned upon, however, normal thing in society, and I feel like it has a really good urban fantasy basis. But it's like, you know, a magic club, and there's these kids who are in the club and they're going to do competitions and stuff. However, they kind of stumble upon a book that might not be the best magic for them to learn, and they have to like go through all these challenges with it, and it includes romance. But The Fascinators was a book that I just wanted to be good so bad, and I feel like when I was reading it, I also felt like it should have been a duology just because of the way it ends, which might be a minor spoiler, but it ends up being very disappointing. The premise, the overall world that it's in has so much potential, and I feel like I just failed to meet that to me, and the ending just felt very lackluster, and I just wish, you know, because the premise 10 out of 10, the actual book 2 out of 5. Here's a book that I loved. I literally loved this book this year, and it's House of Hollows by Crystal Sutherland. This book it's a YA Gothic fairy tale in an urban fantasy. Literally, I didn't know I loved gore and Gothic literature as much, and I feel like this is modern Gothic literature, and I feel like I can consider it that just because of like the vibes. The vibes are there. The vibes are there, and they're very good. And basically, this book is where 3 sisters went missing when they were little and came back a month later with no recollection of the past. And now we fast forward 11 years, and now the youngest, Iris, is 17, and basically the oldest, Gray, goes missing. So she goes to like find her middle sibling, who I forgot the name of sadly, and goes to look for Gray, and it has to like, and then it kind of goes down memory lane with experiencing the past and how they did go missing when they were kids but have no recollection of it. The imagery for me was so good. It kind of goes on the edge of almost being too much imagery, however it really establishes it as like dark, gothic, and like almost horror, and it's a fairy tale. Like, it's so beautiful, and I read this around I think September. It was such a good book to read. I feel like it gave you that creepy crawly feeling, like that horror feeling. It's just a beautiful book to read. I will be keeping this on my bookshelf for a lifetime and recommending it. Honestly, like 4 out of 5 for me. 10 out of 10 recommend. Give you another book. I have Things We Couldn't Say by J. Coles. It's a YA romance, but it's kind of like a romance and family drama, because basically there's this our main character, Giovanni, who mom walked out on his family when he was little, and now he's a teenager and going to high school, plays basketball, and now his mom burns, and now he's having to deal with that while also interacting with romantic interests. But this book was kind of meh. I feel like the book itself, like the premise obviously was really good. However, for me, when I was reading the book felt very unfinished, and I've mentioned this in a previous video, but it was just very unfinished and unedited because of the way the pacing and the story progressed. Very blotchy, and it wasn't very pleasant to read. I have read this book over a long period of time, even though it's a pretty short book. It's just really unsatisfactory to read. 1.5 out of 5. The next book I read, which I was actually very satisfied with. However, I am not the target audience who would have picked this book, was The Princess Diaries by Meg Cabot. Cabo. I do not know how to pronounce your name. However, I read The Princess Diaries. And The Princess Diaries is also the inspo for the movie, but 10 out of 10. Not 10 out of 10, but like 4 out of 5. But it's very enjoyable. I'm not the target audience for it, of course, but I love the movie, and the book does not disappoint. I feel like it's very much like a chick flick, and it's very enjoyable. I would recommend anyone who just kind of wants a little bit of childlike joy in their life. YA is YA I really enjoyed. The last book I read was The Rainbow Fish by Marcus Fisher. It's a kid's book. It's a children's book. We read it as kids. I feel like majority of people in American schools have read it, and I just don't know how we read it to kids. I implore anyone who read it as a child, or like was read it to, I guess, as a child, to read it again, because why do we allow kids to read this? Because I just don't understand why. The book kind of left me with a message of self-sacrifice in order to fit in, and I really didn't enjoy that. I feel like it's not something we should teach children, or if we do give this, like, teach this book, because I'm not for limitations on education, I would say maybe we allow people to make their own references on it, because what do you mean I have to give away my sparkly scales because other people don't feel included? That left me feeling weird. That was all the books I read in 2023. They kind of varied from a lot of YA, surprisingly, and some very childlike books. But thank you for watching. This is all my books I read in 2023. I have opinions and I gave them. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you possibly got a book that you want to read from this. Also, you know, use your public libraries. I work in a public library, so I feel like it's low-key sponsored, but use your public libraries. Buying books can get so expensive. I really don't encourage it, because I would be like regret if I bought all the books that I read this year, just because some of them were disappointing. So use your public library resources. Allow them to have virtual resources if you aren't able to always go to a library, but get a library card. It's not that bad, and support your local libraries because we do need them. Have a great day wherever you are. Good morning, good night, peace.